It has been a long journey, and my brain is so full of movie nonsense that I think it's going smooth. But even so, welcome to the Octemberfest podcast. I am still your host and scryer of the Satanic Jeff, and this is the final weekly wrap-up of 2024. And I am exhausted. 100 movies in 31 days is tough enough when they're good, but downright brutal when half of them make you wish your eyeballs didn't exist. A recurring theme in this week's films as it happens. As I've told people about this podcast, many have asked, what's your favorite scary movie? Like I'm Casey Becker from Scream. I think the real goal of this is to find something worth watching, and it's a very difficult question. It's hard to recommend a movie to scare someone without knowing what scares them. Turns out we're all frightened by different things. Who could have guessed that? This is why you won't hear me call much scary in these reviews. I'm not here to tell you how you'll feel while watching these. Unless they suck, in which case I can describe the mental response clearly, because terrible is objective. It's far harder for me to say what my scariest is, though. Not least because after watching so damn many of these over the years, not many of them still scare. There are a handful that supply legit, lingering creepy feelings. The Babadook, Gongjiam, The Damned Clown in Hell House. Movies that through a combination of creativity and filmmaking techniques and sound design fully capture your attention, and while you're all wrapped up in that moment, hit you with a scare that really connects. These moments may be different for everyone, but finding them is one of the many joys of Octemberfest. All of that being said, only a couple of this week's offerings ever actually frightened me, but that doesn't make any of them less worthy. Overall, this was a solid final week, only a couple of duds, and a few that were just so weird I cannot rank them as I would other movies. But enough preamble, let's get into it. The week started with one of the weirdest movies I'd never heard of, Cemetary Man from 1994. This is a joint French-Italian film, and it is the most French-Italian a horror movie can be, with bizarre visuals and out-of-nowhere romantic attachments and fallout, casual child murder, zombies, serial killings, bad cops, overall insanity. It's an art film, and it's not. It's a horror film, and it's not. It's a comedy, and it's not. Cemetary Man is many things. Coherent isn't one of them. I will try to describe the plot here, and likely fail. Francesco Della Morte is a caretaker of a cemetery in a small Italian town, where his real responsibility is returning the dead to their graves when they rise as zombies shortly after being buried there. He's accompanied by a minion named Nagi, who only speaks the word "nah" through most of the film. Della Morte is having some type of existential crisis. Apparently, zombie hunting is boring him. He seduces a woman in an ossuary who ends up being bitten by her deceased husband, so he shoots her. He meets with the mayor, who's having a nice afternoon chat with a bunch of folks at a cafe. Nagi throws up on the mayor's daughter, who laughs at this and immediately, without cleaning projectile vomit off herself, climbs onto her biker hooligan boyfriend's motorcycle and rides off. In the next scene, they're burying her and her hooligan boyfriend as they had an off-camera wreck. The boyfriend is buried, still burned onto his bike. Nagi takes the girl's reanimated head and puts it into his television, carrying on a relationship with the disembodied head of a 14-year-old until she kills her father, because disembodied heads can fly when they want to, I guess, and Della Morte shoots her in the brain. This isn't the plot. These are just things that happen. There is not a single through-line plot to this film. Della Morte encounters a few women with disastrous results. All of the women are played by the same actress, and eventually he starts killing random people in town, deciding, I don't know, that he can't love. It's bizarre. The cops are terrible, they don't seem to care much. Eventually, Della Morte and Nagi decide to leave town and drive through a tunnel that leads out of their little valley, only to find the road ends abruptly in a sheer drop, and head back. That wasn't brief, and I still left a lot out. This movie is so fucking strange. If you're into cinema oddities, or dark humor, or art house madness, Cemetary Man is worth checking out. If you're sane, probably skip it. Cemetary Man ended up being the only thing I watched on Sunday, which was probably for the best considering the knots it tied my brain in. Monday night, I went for something a bit more stable. Neill Night. Dr. Grant from Jurassic Park has a few standout horror films in his catalog, but I started with 1997's space horror hit Event Horizon. Co-starring A Nightmare on Elm Street 3's Larry Fishburne, Event Horizon follows the crew of the Lewis and Clark as they explore an experimental spaceship that disappeared 7 years earlier. Neill plays Dr. Weir, who created a wormhole device the ship was supposed to use to teleport to a nearby star, but instead took the crew somewhere much darker. As the rescue team explores the seemingly abandoned ship, something messes with their minds, and one by one, the new crew is killed off or driven mad. Some truly grotesque visuals and an outstanding performance by Neill make this movie a standout, but it's brought down a bit by some unfortunate musical choices. Bad techno-pop is the wrong score for a dark, moody horror flick. Rumor has it there were more depictions of the hell dimension the Event Horizon had visited, but the MPAA refused to give the movie an R rating unless they did a lot of editing. All of that was left on the cutting room floor, presumably to be reused in a few years as Terrifier 6. Having survived a harrowing journey into deep space, it was time to delve into insanity in the mouth of madness. John Carpenter is all over the Octember lists, and this 1995 Lovecraftian tale is one of the best and weirdest entries. Neill is John Trent, an insurance investigator hired to find a missing horror writer, Sutter Kane, played wonderfully by Jürgen Prochnow. Trent and Kane's editor Linda Stiles travel to an unmapped town in New England called Hobbs End, a town that's supposed to be fictional, featured in Kane's novels. The lines between fiction and reality blur as ancient dark gods use Kane as a conduit to drive people mad, and that madness opens the door for their return to our reality. In the Mouth of Madness is full of disturbing visuals and questions about the nature of sanity and reality, and while I love it as it is, I think it could have benefited from a little subtlety. Carpenter makes sure the viewer focuses on all the weird rather than just letting it be in the background and making you wonder, did I just see that? As an example, there's a painting behind the leads as they check into the hotel at Hobbs End. It's a generic couple standing in a lake image, the kind of banality that John Cusack talks about in 1408. As they talk with the proprietor, the people in the painting shift, change. This could be excellent left alone. Let the viewer catch it in the background. But instead we see the characters react to the painting, and we get close-ups to make sure we don't miss it. The difference is small, but meaningful. If the characters are seeing things get weird, they may be going mad. But if the viewers see this, and it isn't mentioned, we may be the ones going insane. This one used to creep me out, until I'd watched enough to be somewhat immunized to its brand of horror. Still, there are moments here that remind me of the nightmare fuel it can be. In the end, you have to ask yourself, if you're the last sane person alive, would you want to stay that way? Tuesday night, I decided to launch into a zombie fave I've been trying to work in all month. Return of the Living Dead from 1985. The Romero Living Dead movies, Night, Dawn, and Day, have a fair bit of social satire in them, but Return, made by an entirely different group, is on a higher level. Existing in a world where Night of the Living Dead is a known movie, we're told that that film was a cover-up for real events. And this movie opens by saying that everything we're about to see is true. Names and places are unchanged. And then immediately shows us Unita Medical Supply, where we meet the first of our characters. Freddy has just joined the team of Unita Medical Supply, and warehouse foreman Frank is showing him all of the weird stuff they carry. Split dogs, human skeletons, bodies for research, and barrels of a misdelivered chemical from that incident all those years ago. Just after a conversation about how well sealed the containers are, one of them bursts, dousing Frank and Freddy. Meanwhile, Freddy's friends are in a nearby graveyard waiting for him to finish work and tell them where they should go party, which seems less than necessary as they're already partying in this location. B-movie bombshell Linnea Quigley is here as a death-obsessed punk named Trash, and does a full strip show on a tomb in a bit of cult movie history. After a body in the cold storage locker of the warehouse reanimates and keeps coming back despite being decapitated, dismembered, and put into separate bags, Frank and Freddy realize they're over their head and call their boss Bert, who takes them and the undead mess they've made to his friend Ernie, the mortician that works next door. They convince Ernie to burn the body, and as the smoke from the cremation flows out of the mortuary, it begins to rain. And as the kids in the cemetery run to their car shouting about how the rain burns, the dead start to rise. The movie is full of humor and 80s punk chic, but also packed with some of the most bizarre and creative zombie variations in the genre, all done practically with varying degrees of success. This one is a must-watch for zombie fans, even if the lore they establish here is rarely used outside the Return series. Speaking of which, next up was Return of the Living Dead 3 from 1993. Why not Return of the Living Dead 2? Because it wasn't free to stream, and this was. Maybe I'd have been better off if it were, because this movie was awful. Lacking the humor or clever satire from the original, this one follows an idiot kid who breaks into his military researcher father's lab with his goth girlfriend and discovers he's working on a project to turn the living dead into a controllable weapon. When the idiot kid's girlfriend dies, he takes her to the lab and uses the chemicals there to undead her, then takes her into the world because that won't have consequences. Runs afoul of a Latino gang obsessed with arcade games, the second time this has come up this October, and takes shelter in the sewers with a homeless man. Meanwhile, Zombie Girl has discovered that pain makes her endless hunger stop and does some extreme body mods using scrap around the place, leading to the image that seems to want to give this mess a cult following. A half-naked zombie femme fatale with sewer trash sticking out of her in various places. The girl kills pretty much everyone, the army captures them, idiot kid gets off without any punishment and is somehow given a tour of the lab that his girlfriend and homeless savior are now experimental subjects in. And of course, sets them free to keep spreading zombie plague because he didn't learn his lesson the last time. Everyone here is stupid and selfish and annoying, and the more I think about it, the more I hate this movie. They made a fourth. Someday, I'll need to watch the others, and this fills me with more dread than any scene I've seen this year. I consume a lot of cinema-related media, on top of all the actual movies I binge. One of the influences in doing this project is a group of movie nerds from Wisconsin called Red Letter Media. They do a series on YouTube called Best of the Worst, where they watch obscure and often shitty movies and try to determine which is least shitty. This month's episode introduced me to another piece of weird cinematic detritus I'd not heard of before, but I knew I had to watch. Devil Story, aka some French words I'm not going to pretend I know how to say, aka horse. In the future, I will likely pair this with Cemetary Man as a lose your grip on sanity night. Another disjointed plot in another French movie that is clearly inspired by Italian horror. We'll see if I can boil this one down quicker than the last. Really nutshelling it. A couple on vacation stop at a castle that is also an inn, run by a man who is obsessed with a black horse, and he tells them a local legend about a group of men who would lure ships into rocks to plunder them during storms, until the year they crashed an English ship carrying relics plundered from Egypt into the shore, and the whole shore was consumed by a landslide. The vacationing woman wakes in the night hearing a horse, and goes outside in her nightgown for some reason, only to be sort of attacked, I guess, by the horse the old man was complaining about earlier. The old man grabs a shotgun and spends the rest of the movie alternating between swinging his gun around uselessly and shooting at nothing, intercut with scenes of the black horse running around in circles and neighing in some plains. The woman, meanwhile, tries to drive away. Remember, her husband is asleep in a safe building not 15 feet away. But the car is dead, and so she runs and encounters the remaining family of the cursed ship robbers, an old woman and a deformed man-beast in a Nazi SS uniform, who are attempting to bury some random people the man-beast had killed earlier in the picture. And decide they may as well bury Vacation Lady alive at the same time, because why not? But Horse shows up and has a 12-minute kick fight with man-beast, and the woman escapes, until a mummy that came out of a ghost ship that emerged from a cliffside shows up to summon an undead bride, but the woman tears some bandages off and the mummy vomits on himself for a minute, which lets her escape again, and then things get incomprehensible for a while. And then she wakes up in a room that she doesn't know, barely asks any questions, and goes right back to the cliffside, where she gets tripped by a cat and eaten by the grass. Makes perfect sense, right? And then the movie kind of starts over. This is some super strange stuff. It's tough to track down and looks about as a low-budget French project from the 80s should. I can't really judge the acting as I watched an English dub, but I don't think dialogue changes would help this. It's another winner for the weird crowd, but probably not for mainstream consumption. Needing safe harbor, but with boats and curses on my mind for some reason, I ended the night with another Carpenter flick, The Fog from 1980. So easy to explain compared to Devil Story. As the town of Antonia Bay prepares to celebrate its centennial, the literal ghosts of the past return for vengeance, carried by an eerie, glowing fog. Only Tom Atkins, Carpenter's favorite actor for his recurring late 40s guy who is not a cop but wants to investigate a mystery anyways and ends up hooking up with a woman half his age almost immediately character, kinda niche, right? And Lighthouse radio station owner Adrienne Barbeau seem to know what's going on, but don't have a lot of agency in resolving the crisis. Like the audience, most of the characters are just along for the ride here, and this would probably be a dud of a film in most hands. But Carpenter makes it work. I think the soundtrack does a lot of heavy lifting here. Another one of his minimalist themes lending a creepy vibe to car alarms going off, and people slowly walking with candles. Not the best from his catalog, but I still like it. Maybe scary if you live in a small coastal town founded by people who murdered lepers for their money. This brings us to Devil's Night, which seemed like the perfect theme for Wednesday evening. See if you can spot the trend as we go through these movies. The Devil Below is up first. Released in 2021, it is the only movie from this decade that I watched this week, and I'm reminded why much of my list is older. Carpenter is able to make a boring idea compelling in The Fog, but The Devil Below makes an interesting one super dull. A group of people less equipped for their task than the science team in the Prometheus go looking for a lost mining town, ostensibly to study the effects of long-burning coal fire that led to its abandonment decades before. The truth is, the miners delved too deeply and unleashed underground monsters, but rather than getting Gandalf battling a Balrog, we get a colony of rubber-headed leechmen, or something, mostly shot distorted because they knew their costume was crappy. They have some interesting threads to pull here, but choose not to do anything with them, and I was left wondering how a horde of man-eating chuds were able to survive unknown ages underground without a food source. This wasn't bad enough to invoke wrath, but wasn't good enough to recommend. Bland is worst. Next up, The Devil's Backbone from 2001. Chosen purely for the title, I didn't know this film's pedigree. Directed by award-winning auteur and tentacle-loving horror maven Guillermo del Toro, this haunted orphanage tale actually won some festival awards in its day. Set during the Spanish Civil War, it follows Carlos as he is left at a remote orphanage run by resistance supporters. Upon arriving, he sees strange things and is drawn into a mystery that leads to tragedy. This is a good movie, well shot with a solid story. But it's also subtitled, which was hard for me to connect with at the end of Octember. This is worth checking out if you're looking for a more somber film and don't mind reading, or speak Spanish. And then we're back to the Land of Strange. The Devil's Reign, a 1975 head-scratcher starring Tom Skerritt, William Shatner, and Ernest Borgnine. The movie seems to open in the middle, as Captain Kirk's family is worried about their father who hasn't returned home despite a massive storm outside. Turns out he went to confront local Satanist priest Corbus, Borgnine, and just as Shatner's about to go after the old man, his truck pulls up to the house. The father stumbles to the house, gives a message about bringing Corbus the book, and promptly melts into a pile of goo. And that's the key to this whole weird movie mess. It's about eyeless, melting Satanists. Sure, at a couple points, Corbus turns into a goat man, and there's some kind of subplot about souls trapped in a jar for 3 centuries, but the reason to watch this is 10 straight minutes of Technicolor melting that closes the movie. It's gross and off-putting, and somehow rated PG, but will absolutely scar children. Add this to the pile of not for general viewing, but I will watch again. Devil's Night's wrapping up now, and I was so close to my goal. Devil's Reign marked the 94th movie on this year's list, but I knew 6 in one night was going to be a tall order. So I grabbed one more devilish film from my collection to close out the theme, even if it's stretching a bit. Ridley Scott's 1985 dark fairy tale Legend features Tim Curry as the Lord of Darkness in the best devil costume ever put to screen. Darkness schemes to end the day by killing the last of the unicorns, and only a group of magical forest folk led by 22-year-old Tom Cruise can stop him. Misunderstood by the production studio and audiences on release, Legend has found its place in cult film fandoms. Evidently, the prosthetics process was so grueling, Curry declared he would never again use them, but the results are amazing. The movie carries a dreamlike feeling throughout, which can distract from some of the truly dark things that are shown, like giant pigmen butchering living people for food. There's a director's cut, which carries an additional 30 minutes of movie, but I prefer the Tangerine Dream soundtrack in the theatrical release. This one's worth finding for Curry alone, but the whole film is an experience. And then it's Halloween night. With only 5 movies left to reach the goal and one night to do it, I started a bit early. I threw on Rob Zombie's 2007 version of Halloween while I finished my workday, knowing I could tune out through most of it because it's not very good. This is one of the worst kinds of remake, where nothing changed makes the movie better than the original and seems only to exist to coast on its legacy. but it's 2 hours of Halloween-themed movie, makes for fine background noise for the season. I don't know why Rob Zombie seems to love cutting to treetops while people are being killed in this movie, but it's a little off-putting. Oh well. Next, RLM inspired me again. During the review of Demonic Toys, I noticed it takes place on Halloween night. That and the fact that I've not actually watched it sold me, so I dug it up. Now, I should clarify a mistake I made in this thinking. While a flashback shows the demon that controls the evil toys being stillborn on Halloween 66 years previous, they don't mention it being Halloween in present day at any point of the film, which is too bad because they could have had fun with that. Anyhow, Demonic Toys is a movie about a handful of unfortunates who get trapped in a warehouse that happens to be over the resting place of a dormant demon, who's revived by blood and possesses a handful of toys that seem to exist only to be possessed. We see these monstrosities before the devil awakens, and they are already terrifying. No one is selling this shit to kids. They actually bother to build backstory for some of these characters, though, and do some character building to make us want to see some of them survive. Not all of them, naturally. Most of the cast is there to be fodder for a farting baby doll and a jack-in-the-box that was seemingly modeled after Pennywise. I would say Demonic Toys is as good as the best Puppet Master movie, which is to say middling but fine. If you're in the mood to see someone fight a man in a demonic teddy bear suit, this is your jam. As these 6 kids in my neighborhood started to trick or treat, I decided it was time to go traditional. Carpenter's 1979 Halloween. If you've not seen this and listened to me talk about movies for the last few weeks, you're doing this wrong. I don't think there's anything I can say about Halloween that hasn't already been said better by any of the documentaries or oral histories of this genre-spawning low-budget lightning strike. So I'm not going to say much at all. It's great. It deserves to be watched every October. Less universally beloved, however, is Carpenter's 1982 follow-up, Halloween 3. The plan wasn't to make an endless series of slasher movies starring a featureless Hulk in a Shatner mask, but rather to make an anthology of movies set on Halloween night. Carpenter and his writing partner Deborah Hill were pushed into doing Halloween 2 as a direct sequel, but only signed on to the third movie if they could leave Michael out of it. This meant viewers and critics expecting more butcher's knife slaughter were baffled by the movie they got, though even with clear expectations, some befuddlement was destined. Halloween 3 is a movie about a Celtic cult using computers, stolen pieces of Stonehenge, shitty rubber Halloween masks, and a television broadcast to turn kids into bugs and snakes in some kind of ritual sacrifice. Oh, and they also have robotic replicants, because of course they do. And only Tom Atkins, once again not a cop, and once again hooking up with a woman half his age, can get to the bottom of things and try to save the day. This movie is 11 flavors of nuts. I think I like the cashews best. But the whole thing is a lot of fun if you go into it knowing it's not a silent teleporting murderer movie. Give it a chance. It's almost on par with Halloween for entertainment and Halloween vibes. But beware the earworm. Finally, and I saved this for last because of the aforementioned earworm, I watched 1987's classic villain mashup, The Monster Squad. Yes, it's a movie about a bunch of tweens fighting the classic Universal monsters. But it's also a Shane Black movie. So you have a family about to fall apart, and cops exploding in cars, and Wolfman has nards. This may just be beloved by viewers of a certain vintage, but there's enough here that remains great that it should have wider recognition. Does Rudy do all the hard work here? Absolutely. But you better remember that Fat Kid's name is Horace, and that he has a magic pocket full of garlic bread. Monster Squad is great, and I will fist fight anyone who disagrees. Or at least call him bogus. And that's the season. 31 days, 100 movies, 2 bailouts, 1 bout of aphasia, a broken mind, and a sore back. It seems worth running down the best from this year, so I'm gonna do that. Best new stuff, Arcadian, Late Night with the Devil, Quatermass in the Pit, Oddity. Best stuff I've seen but don't watch every year, yet? Blood Red Sky, Black Mountainside, One Cut of the Dead, Deadstream, Warlock, The Blob, Howl, Last Voyage of the Demeter, Beyond the Gates, You Might Be the Killer, and The Final Girls. Weirdest stuff, Devil's Reign, Devil's Story, Cemetary Man, All You Need Is Death. Best bad stuff, Zombies, Spookies, and Maximum Overdrive. I'm working on putting together a place to check out the whole movie list and ratings, Keep an eye on the cast description for updates there. While the festival of Octemberfest is now over, I'll be releasing longer reviews throughout the year. So if you can't get enough of listening to me talk about movies, you're in luck. You need to rest up now. Only 333 days until the next Octemberfest. Until then, thanks for listening and keep it spooky.